All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about helicopter Ben Bernanke and the idea that the Fed is this super secret organization that's like taking over the government or something like that. Just the relationship between the Fed and the government is really misunderstood. And this is Brian Lewis with MMT Investing, and things just changed. So, Ben Bernanke always smashes that like button right now, please, to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. So, you can look up interviews of Ben Bernanke, and they ask him, like, what is the Fed gonna do? And he says, the Fed will, of course, do what Congress tells us to do. The Fed is an agent of the Congress. It's not part of that branch of government, but it's an agent. It's like a secret agent of the Congress, like James Bond. So the Fed is not technically part of the government, but it is part of the government. So I just kind of wanted to look at the structure of the government and the world financial system, and like the difference between public and private is just really misunderstood. It's like the American government, the three branches are definitely public sector government, and then like the citizens are definitely private sector, but it gets a little fuzzy in between with the primary banks and the businesses. They are all, the dividing line between public and private is a little fuzzy. So like the Fed creates treasuries, or I'm sorry, the Congress creates treasuries and gives them to the Fed, and then the Fed creates base money and gives it to the primary banks, and then the primary banks create currency and give it to the other banks, and then the other banks give loans out to businesses, and then businesses use those loans to pay employees, and like every part of that is government, including like being a citizen. Like if you're a citizen of the USA, you are part of the government. You're a taxpayer. So I don't know. Just the concept of public and private is a little fuzzy, and the Fed is like directly working with the Congress. Like they're mostly government, mostly public, and then the primary banks are kind of, I guess, kind of in the middle, and then the other banks and the businesses are more on the private side. But it's all one kind of connected system. Um, just just like the general idea of how it works, and like and the international banking system, it's even a little more weird because the Fed has treasuries, and the Fed doesn't really give base money to the international banks that provide the world reserve currency. Like the international banks just keep collateral on their balance sheets, and they make US dollar loans by just trading around collateral and swapping collateral for money in the and like the money markets and the repo market. Um, so it's just really complicated, misunderstood system. I don't know if anyone really understands exactly how the international banking system works. They call it shadow banking. I don't even know if people in the Fed know how it works. But I think they're trying to figure it out right now and fix what's going on, because the international banking system is messing up right now. Um, so, anyways, that's just like Ben Bernanke and the Fed and the whole secret central bank kind of thing. Like the Fed is the world central bank, basically. America is the world reserve currency, and the Fed is sort of disconnected with the international banks that issue the dollars. So those international dollars are called euro dollars. It's the euro dollar banking system, and the Congress and the Fed just kind of handed the job of issuing the world currency off to the banks, and there's a really huge amount of dollars outside of the U.S. and the rest of the world. It was way bigger than I thought it was. I saw the last estimate I saw was like $37 trillion. So when the Fed is trying to reconnect the system and his balance sheet is going up by 1 trillion, I mean, you can see that's not as big a number as people think it is relative to the whole international banking system. Um, so that's just like the general idea, and and like the money printing. You hear Bernanke talking about money printing. He's like, it's not it's not really money printing. Like, we don't make paper. We just mark up the balance sheets, and we just like add numbers in the computer to the bank accounts. So it's like money printing. Um, so yeah, he's talked about it, but he's like, it's not tax money. Like, we just mark up the balance sheets. So they're just creating money out of thin air and adding it to bank accounts, and that's been pretty well known for a while. Um, so like, I was a delegate in the presidential election for Ron Paul and a community organizer, and the whole point that's a helicopter. The whole the whole point of that campaign, the whole point of the Ron Paul campaign was just to make awareness of the Fed and the system, because nobody knew how it worked, and the libertarians want to promote sound money kind of idea, and they just wanted to put the spotlight on the Fed and be like, they're creating money, they're creating a bubble, like, pay attention to them. And now everybody knows what the Fed is. So congratulations, Ron Paul. Sorry, Bernanke. And I don't know, that doesn't really fix the problem. That just makes people a little bit more aware of what's going on. So that's what's going on. It's a misunderstood, complicated mess of a system right now, and I don't know what's going to happen, but that's the basic structure of it, and it's not quite as crazy as most people think it is. Like, looking at comments online on YouTube and stuff, it's a pretty typical kind of government monetary system. It's a world currency system. So that's just a look at Bernanke and the Fed and the money printing, and the awareness that's available now. It's quite a bit more. Oh, and also, like, if you want more information on like what the banks are doing, like, Bank of England is a really good resource. I'll do another video right now on Bank of England, but they are way less secretive about what they're doing. They just talk all about money printing and talk about the monetary operations and all the stuff that the Fed won't talk about. Like, Bank of England just talks about it. They have videos on their website. I'll talk about Bank of England right now. So cheers.